Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being with us. I'm Amanda Hill.
And I'm Brian Yacono. Tonight, we begin a new series of reports that you will see regularly right here in our 6 p.m. half hour.
They'll target something we can all relate to these days, the high cost of living. Whether it be groceries, energy, or rents and mortgages, we're calling the series Priced Out. And we begin down on the farm where a freeze in federal grants initiated by the Trump White House and being fought over in the courts has farmers caught right in the middle. In an industry where profit margins are slim, even in a good year, they look to grants to help them pay for improvements they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. As CENTER Maine's Raya Wooten shows us, though, with those grants being held up, Maine farmers are being priced out, and you might be next.
Opening doors to greenhouses at Kevin Levitt's farm just takes a quick pull. There's another thing that happened quickly. Within days, federal grant funding guaranteed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture was pulled from farmers all across the country and in Maine. Due to President Donald Trump's federal funding freeze, money to support farmers that has already been approved by Congress has now been halted.
Every time we talk to the USDA, they have no further information.
It costs more than $1,000 a month to power greenhouses that store crops at Farmer Kev's organic farm. At first, adding a solar plant to the farm to offset the cost seemed like a smart idea to this farm owner.
We applied for some grant money to help put in a solar array.
Levitt spent $150,000 installing this small solar farm last summer, thinking that grant funding from the USDA would reimburse him for some of the cost. The work is done, but the funding is frozen. If you do not get that funding, if it never comes through, what happens here?
I don't know.
Being $45,000 in the hole leaves Levitt at a loss for words. U.S. Congresswoman Shelley Pingree has plenty. She says the freeze leaves farmers and consumers high and dry.
Well, this just makes me so angry. When you had a president who campaigned on lowering grocery store prices and making it easier for farmers in America, and what he's going to do is end up increasing the cost of groceries. I mean, he's not only cutting aid to farmers, which is going to make their costs higher. These immigration sweeps are often cutting people who work for our farmers.
Grant interruptions also put farmer Seth Kreck $6,000 in the hole. He says he's putting a pause on spending while he's still ahead.
We can't then give our best price to wholesalers and consumers. We've got to be very cautious in going ahead. And so I can't see a scenario where this is going to bring prices down.
At least for now. Raya Wooten, CENTER Maine.
Congresswoman Shelley Pingree says it is illegal for the president to stop funding that Congress has authorized. She says many Democrats on the Hill are working hard to counteract the impact of the president's funding freezes. Other news tonight, police in Portland have released the identities of two men whose bodies were found near Riverside Street this morning.
What is yet to be determined, though, is how they died. So a call came in around 7:40 this morning after someone found their bodies in a wooded area behind the Hannaford supermarket on Riverside. Police say William Lease and Lee Thomas Johnson were believed to be unhoused. The city's homeless services center is in that same area. The state medical examiner's office will be performing autopsies to determine how those men died. Today in Augusta, lawmakers on the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee heard testimony on a bill that would remove mandatory minimum sentences for crimes. This would mean judges would have complete discretion in deciding how long someone should serve in prison or jail. The legislation also calls for the Criminal Law Advisory Commission to compile a list of current crimes that come with mandatory minimums. While supporters of this effort to strike down mandatory minimums hope it will allow judges to consider outside factors while sentencing a defendant instead of being forced to abide by blanket guidelines, opponents worry it will mean shorter sentences for violent criminals.
We want a safe environment, and this would take that safety away. We bow to the prison system instead of looking at the victims.
Without mandatory minimums, that allows the judge to actually consider who the person is when they're doing sentencing and tailor the sentence to that person's history.
During today's public hearing, the Department of Public Safety's Bureau of Highway Safety came out against this bill, warning that changes to mandatory minimums around OUI would lead to cuts in federal funding. The legislation will now go to a work session in committee. you step into any of Maine's legal marijuana shops, you will see them. Products with names like vanilla frosting, Samoas, or ice cream mints.
And like the names, the packaging they come in are meant to resemble well-known snacks or candy. But recently, police in one Maine city have come across similar packaging during a traffic stop, and the drugs hidden inside are much stronger than pot and illegal. Here's CENTER Maine's Pearl Small.
A routine traffic stop Saturday quickly took a turn for the South Portland Police Department when an officer discovered two Massachusetts men were allegedly driving through the city with large amounts of hard drugs in the car. The way those drugs were packaged led to the bust getting more than average attention from people in the community.
Just seeing that people's reaction was concerning for sure, especially for young people having possibly increased access to substance use.
Leanne Dodge leads SOPO Unite, a group that works to prevent South Portland's youth from using substances. She, like many others, noticed the bags seemed to resemble what legal marijuana vendors sometimes use to package their products.
Most of what is sold in Maine is through legal processes. However, there is the black market where those substances are coming in and often can be laced with other substances like fentanyl. And that, again, is alarming that someone wouldn't know what they were actually getting or consuming.
You can buy these packages online.
While the public could find it confusing, South Portland Police Chief Dan Ahern says the difference between legal and illegal packaging is usually clear to law enforcement.
So you can't sell that kind of packaged marijuana product in a legal cannabis store. This is candy packaging.
Chief Ahern says the dozens of bags found in the drug bust were likely purchased online and were labeled with different name brands like Skittles, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, or Welch's Fruit Snacks.
And then individual packets of marijuana, fentanyl, cocaine were packaged inside of those what looked like cannabis candy packaging.
Ahern believes the suspects were likely using the bags to disguise the drugs during transport and didn't intend on selling them that way. But it's still something to be aware of for those who are legal cannabis users.
It doesn't say on the package, this is not legitimate, obviously. So that is very concerning that can just freely come into the state like that.
In South Portland, Pearl Small, CENTER Maine.
Still ahead in this half hour, how weather disasters in other parts of the country fueled by climate change are affecting the Red Cross right here in Maine.
That's a little later. First, though, helping improve the physical and mental health of Maine's indigenous people, courtesy of two aunties. Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness serves the indigenous community and the surrounding areas with resources and clinics.
And apart from their leadership roles, two women in that organization also moonlight as podcast hosts, bringing messages of positivity and healing.
CENTER Maine's Christian Harsa paid a visit to the Aunties on Air studio.
Dangop, Sirewen.
Welcome to Aunties on Air, and some uncles too.
When Lisa Sakabason and Laura Stevens are in the studio, they don the role of auntie.
Any one of us can be an auntie. It really is about supporting people in whatever they need support in.
The aunties welcome guests and tell stories, using the platform to uplift Indigenous voices.
And sharing stories of healing and connection
that really have not been available to us in this format before.
At the root of the podcast are Wabanaki values.
Respect, reciprocity, of humility.
And this month specifically, love. For their episode titled For the Love of Music, the aunties spoke with a special uncle, internationally renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma.
Being able to meet with Uncle Yo-Yo was nice. It felt like a reunion, a family.
Even somebody with all of those accolades, he was most proud of how he was with other people.
The aunties also often invite guests from Maine talking about issues that impact Wabanaki people. In one of their most recent episodes, they sat down with Maine's Department of Corrections Commissioner Randy Liberty. He says being in the studio felt therapeutic.
It was an environment where the interviewers were really concerned about, healing communities.
Liberty has worked to reform Maine's correctional facilities into a place where residents, not inmates, can grow.
The way we make communities safer is by providing treatment, education, programming, and providing an opportunity for individuals to improve themselves while they're doing time.
The studio is often filled with people who have those passions and want to share them. And that was our experience with Randy Liberty, for sure.
Maintaining a platform for stories that impact Indigenous people is what the aunties see as their podcast's goal.
As Wabanaki people, and I would say Indigenous people as a whole, we're often not the narrators of our own stories.
And at their podcast table, she says, is the place for that.
It's okay for people from many spaces to come to a table and connect. That's powerful.
In Bangor, Christian Harsa, News Center, Maine.
Now that episode where the aunties sit down and talk about music with Yo-Yo Ma is set to be released Tuesday.
You can find that episode and all others wherever you get your podcasts. Looks really interesting. All right, Keith says we have at least 2 more storms headed our way. His forecast is next.
And later I hear they lost their local YMCA. They did not take it lying down, though. What they did to bring it back as News Center Maine at 6 continues.